Welcome to the Health on Track podcast. Let's talk well-being.
Welcome to the Health on Track podcast, offering you a shot of wellness. I'm Hayley, Member Engagement and PR Manager at GIG Golf. Most people, whenever they hear the word bullying, their mind immediately goes to a school with children or teenagers being bullied. But actually, it can be much deeper than that. Today we're here to shed some light on that. Joining us today is Maisoon Shah, a psychologist at the American Center for Psychiatry and Neurology, with several years of experience in the UK and the UAE. Maisoon, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're absolutely welcome. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, for everyone listening, having an understanding of bullying, I think everyone's heard it within their lifetime. What do we class as bullying? What is that phrase?
So, bullying is an aggressive form of behavior where someone deliberately and repeatedly tries to intimidate or cause harm to an individual. So it's not just a single act of meanness, but it's a pattern of behavior causing significant distress to the individual, which in our case is like the victim.
Okay. And are the different types of bullying, like the different types of like forms of bullying?
Absolutely. So we've got, when we start with the verbal bullying, which is the classic name teasing, insults, threats at some point as well. We've got physical bullying, the classic aggression, pushing, shoving. We've got social bullying. Now, this might be an interesting one because it's also known as relational aggression, where the bully tries to manipulate people around them, spread gossip, rumors to disrupt or damage one's reputation.
Okay, so it's not physically at them, like it's not all verbally at them, it's around them to make people suggest something.
Yeah, so they feel a little isolated or, oh, all eyes are on me and why. And we've got cyberbullying, which is more prevalent now. So it takes place over electronic means such as emails, texts, social media platforms. We've got posting hurtful comments, images as well sometimes.
And so you spoke about cyberbullying. How long has that been around for? Is that something that's very new? Because most people have heard that term, but I feel like it's come to light most recently over the last few years. So has that been around for a long time, or?
It's been around since social media has been around, right? So we've got Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, emails, text messages. So whenever they see the opportunity to exercise that lack of accountability they have hiding behind a screen, they would go ahead and misuse it.
Yeah.
So I think as long as this has been, trolling has been also such a large part. From celebrities to anyone owning an Instagram account, you're out there. So,
what does that term mean, trolling? I hear it often, and I think I've got the rough idea of it, but can you just explain?
So trolling is either mocking, mimicking, making fun of any characteristics, your habits, your appearance, where you come from. So basically just making fun of the things that you do or indulge in for even pleasure activities. So that bothers them, apparently.
Yeah, for no reason. And is it more of a personal attack, trolling?
Absolutely. So if you put your personal life out there, if it is, oh, I'm traveling here, or I'm using this car, or even if there's a picture where a brand shows up, it's like, oh, what is this? You're boasting about it. You're such a show off. What is this? This is name calling. So it again classifies under verbal bullying, which is of course taking place online, which is why then it's classified as cyberbullying.
That's really interesting. And how can someone identify if they are being bullied in any environment?
Right.
It's quite a big question, I think.
So since bullying is a very obvious form of causing hurt, it doesn't go unnoticed.
Okay.
Yet we choose to remain silent about it. So that interferes with the acknowledgement part of it. So it is pretty obvious that, okay, this is an unacceptable behavior. It's making me feel uncomfortable. General indicators of that would be if you're being targeted for your choices, for your habits, where you come from, your sexuality, repeated negative behaviors, labeling you as, oh, such a sissy, or you're such a loser. you're doing well in academics and you get called oh, such a geek, such a nerd. Of course, this again takes an emotional, psychological toll on you as well. So that includes increased anxiety, sadness, worry. You start avoiding places and people. So that classifies again under escapism.
Isolation.
You just start isolating yourself.
Which then
And-
affects mental health. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all of these that I mentioned now manifest into physical symptoms. So sometimes you might also feel stomach aches, nausea, headaches, changes in appetite, sleep irregularities. So I think
Wow.
these are things that we can look out for as well.
And where do you feel like the most common type of bullying takes place? Is it in schools? Because as I said, when you hear bully, like if someone says they're being bullied, you hear it most commonly, I feel, in schools with children. But it does happen everywhere. It can happen in a family environment, it can happen in a workplace environment, friendship circles. Where would you say you feel or you hear the most common forms of bullying?
All right. So wherever there are two individuals, that's where bullying can happen.
Okay.
Right? So it
Literally
can
anywhere.
literally anywhere, unfortunately, right? So like you said, it can start from home. That is our primary environment that we get exposed to as we're, introduced to the world. We see our home, our family dynamics. Is there sibling rivalry? Is there favoritism? Then we've got schools, classrooms, playgrounds, cafeteria, buses. We've got public and social places as well. So if you're in sports teams, neighborhood groups, of course we mentioned online as well, and workplaces too. That's a discrete one. But in workplaces, when you feel like your performance is being undermined for absolutely no reason, that's a form of bullying. It exists there, unfortunately, yeah.
Where does bullying come from? Like, how does someone learn to be a bully? And do people learn to become a bully? Or is it just something they've seen, so then they pick up that habit and they don't actually recognize it as bullying?
Right. Absolutely. A bully is not born.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're taught to bully. So interestingly, in 12 out of 15 shootings in the US in the past decade, it was reported that the bully had history of violence, abuse, and bullying themselves.
Okay, so it normally comes from.
So we
they've
know
had
that
it
there's a
happen.
cycle, right? But this not necessarily means that, oh, if you're being bullied, you automatically turn into a bully. You're more susceptible to it if you don't handle that abuse or that distress in healthy ways, which is where I think the importance of podcasts like these, our awareness around bullying comes into most value.
And if someone, I'm just thinking from our listeners' point of view, if someone kind of is sat there thinking, do I have any of these traits, or have I ever made some of these comments? Does that make me a bully? Do you feel like some people within their life might have had some of these comments in there, and then a moment of reflection? Does that mean that they are a bully, or does that mean that they have these traits, or maybe they need to work on themselves to kind of recognize that?
So we are flawed, right, by nature.
Yeah.
It isn't possible that
perfect.
we're not perfect. We can try to be more mindful. I think that's where awareness and education, stepping into someone else's shoes to perceive how your comment has made them feel, learning, and perhaps then mending and molding your ways to be more catering to people, their feelings. So it's not that once we've made that mistake or comment, we're unable to go back on that. Of course you can. If you've really reflected on that, and if you've, you said you feel, all right, this is something that wasn't acceptable, and I wouldn't be able to, carry on with this, and I wouldn't be able to get away with this all the time. I think that is a moment of realization, and it is reversible. Perhaps not the hurting part of it, but so you don't carry it on.
How would you recommend that people kind of move forward if they have recognized they have these traits and they actually don't like being that way, and they know that they're hurting people along the way, but it's kind of maybe a way for them to feel better, or it's something that they've been used to for so long. What would you say to those people, and as a way to kind of recognize it? They've recognized it, so how do they manage that and move forward?
Right. So there's this, the psychology behind that is that, so when we mentioned that there's a cycle of bullying, so we're taught to bully sometimes, and when we're bullied, we exhibit that sort of aggression. So there's something called the triangle metaphor. So we are going to imagine the bully being right in the middle of it. So we have the power imbalance. Any way the bully feels certain sort of authority or control over the individual. It could be with social status, it could be with physical strength. That's when they feel, oh, okay, this is my chance. Then we've got the second side of it, which is the psychological needs. So while growing up, when they have unmet psychological needs, such as lack of validation, feelings of insecurity, inadequacy due to poor parenting styles as well, that again is an influencer of the, why they then choose to bully. And then the last side of it is social learning, right? So when our home environments or the school environment condone and normalize aggression, in simple ways, we've got these video games, and parents are not so mindful that there's a limit, there's an age limit to the movies, to the video games that they indulge every day in. So perhaps, it could be either
but it's keeping them quiet, so kind of that's why
right?
they just
It's
allow
like,
them.
just give them the iPad. But this is how you take steps to, am I exposing too much? So perhaps one of that factor or a combination of these three or multiple influences is what then gives rise to that aggressive behavior. Once they have recognized that, okay, I am turning into a bully, which was what your question was, right?
Yeah.
Right. So first is pausing and reflecting. Okay. Okay, this was unacceptable. Clearly, reading the body language or however that reaction or response came through to them, then being mindful about it, listening and learning that, okay, this wasn't very nice of me to do so. I have hurt someone. I might be pushing myself away from people deliberately, being mindful of differences. Every individual is unique. They will have different cultural backgrounds. They are coming from different races. They will have habits which might not resonate, not necessarily, it's not supposed to. And of course, if you have done something, sincerely apologizing for it and leading by example. Now, this is for those who silently witness, which we, are known as bystanders. So just to be mindful of, all right, so this is happening. Perhaps not, it can be overwhelming that, no, I can't make all the difference in the world. But you can start with yourself.
Yeah.
Be that role model, foster that positive environment. It's never too late.
Okay. Just take that step.
Yeah.
And you touched on this kind of psychology in children, that it might not actually be from their parents or from kind of the surroundings, but it's from the things they watch on TV. It's the things they see. I mentioned just off camera that we got a 19-month-old daughter. There's a few cartoons that have been recommended to us, and we're watching them, and we're like, that cartoon, not to name any, is being really horrible to her brother. And you see elements of, actually, that's not really a nice thing. I don't want her seeing that, especially because I'm just about to give birth to her brother. But I don't want her seeing these kind of negative and speaking back to the parents. And so do you feel like that does have a huge impact on children developing these behaviors in terms of like bullying and things like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Going back to what I said, the environment we create at home is the primary environment of the child being introduced to. So they will learn by modeling the behavior that we exhibit around each other. So Now, this is where discrete forms of bullying can occur, right, between siblings. So we've got sibling rivalry. Now, this is a tricky one because we often don't know the line between banter and bullying.
They're just playing.
Yeah,
Yeah, when
they're
you
just
just say, they're just playing, they're play
it'll make them
fighting.
stronger. Learn how to take a punch. It's okay. But that's where it gets tricky.
Okay.
Are they being bullied? Is this just sibling banter? So what really helps here is that don't focus on the function of that behavior, but focus on how that behavior made the person feel. Did it take a hit at their self-esteem? Are they avoiding their sibling? Are they crying themselves to sleep? Now that's the
And you mean on the victim
Yeah,
of the bullying?
absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's the sibling that's being bullied.
Right, and then it can occur in like various ways, such as manipulating, as in playing psychological tactics to, forcing them to comply to unreasonable demands, like
Yeah.
don't tell mom or else, or
Yeah.
when it gets a bit too much, or we've got mocking, comparison. Oh, Susie's
better than
Susie's
that.
sister doesn't do this. How come you're like this? Why are you such a snitch? Okay.
Then I won't be because, yeah. That's really interesting. I never really thought about that kind of element to it. So we spoke about kind of going to the victim there and kind of how are they feeling about the situation, kind of saying it's not okay to do that. How do we then go to the bullier as a child? So how do we help them understand that it's not okay to make someone feel that way?
Right. So, again, like I said, whenever there are two individuals, bullying will take place if there's an opportunity for the individual to exercise their power. So, I mean, it really differs where they are. If it's in the classroom, if it's in the playground, other people witnessing it. So instead of having like a step-by-step protocol, what I like to then emphasize on is there are phases to that. So there's before the bullying episode, during the bullying episode, and after the bullying episode. So before is like a little bit of a cushioning. We're just protecting ourselves, right? So first of all,
Padding.
Yeah, we're just padding.
Pad ourselves out.
So we notice that is she being mean to other people in the group, or is she or he dominating over somebody, workplace or school, within children as well. So once you notice that, okay, there is a bully and there might be a chance that I might be next,
Okay.
right? That's when you go on to the second part of padding, which is establish boundaries, set limits, use an assertive tone that I don't appreciate being talked to like that. I don't appreciate when you use words like that. So what you do is you set a limit, you set boundaries, and then perhaps seep in potential consequences that might take place if they do go ahead with that behavior with you. Like, if you do this, I might have to blah, 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 report it to my mom or the teacher or whoever is
My
in
boss,
authority.
or- yeah.
I mean, to my boss, right?
Yeah.
At workplaces as well. So what you've done is you've created that environment, which is that the bullier, before they come to you, they know that, all right, she's already told me, she or he has already told me these are my boundaries, this is what's going to potentially happen. So you've protected yourself in that way. It's the most that you can do. So this is before the bullying episode. During that episode, wherever you are, first of all, ensure safety. Know when to walk away.
Okay.
If it's going to get nasty, if it's going to get very aggressive, calmly walk away. And I say calmly because that's very important, because bullies feed off of your reaction,
And fear, yeah.
right? So
It's like in an argument with your spouse sometimes, like you end up kind of going for each
Back
other,
and
don't
forth,
you?
back and
Because
forth.
you're like, if you're going to say something, I'm going to say something back.
right, and it becomes and at the end of the day, you're like, what were we fighting about at the
Yeah, I
end?
can't even remember what the first thing was.
Right, because the reaction gets you so riled up.
A lot of my friends have always said that they hate it when their husbands walk away. And like, they're like, I want an argument, like come back and argue with me. But I think that's just, I don't think that's a form of bullying. I think that's just
I
relationships.
hope not. It's not a
I
form
think that's
of
just
bullying.
relationships.
But yes, so I
Yeah.
think that is very also important, is to just stay calm, confident, know when to walk away, ensure that you're safe at all times.
Okay.
Do not react, only respond.
Okay, it's really easy to say do not react.
We're not talking about your husband here.
No, but especially I mean, for teenagers not to react at school. So if someone's come to attack them, it's like the fight or flight.
Yes.
Everyone talks about the fight or flight.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people have been brought up to, and they are not the bully, but they're the victim, and someone has come to attack them.
Yeah.
That's the bully. And now, what do you say to the victim that now has been taught to fight or flight? Like their response is to fight back and kind of argue back. So what we were just saying there is to kind of walk away calmly. How do you teach that? On how can you help people understand that that is the kind of way to go?
Right. So that's a really good question, actually, because what happens is, because it's such a broad topic, and sometimes because you don't see it, you feel like it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And family thinks that, oh, they're probably teaching this at school. At school, you're probably thinking, they probably, family's probably doing a good job at it. And the child is there blank, not aware of how to respond and to react. Which is why I said that this general protocol that I just mentioned, that before the episode, during the episode, and after the episode, what do we do if this has happened to us? I was able to fight, I was able to flight, I was able to freeze. Everyone has different reactions to that. So after that has happened to you, no matter how you reacted, record or document that episode.
Okay.
Make sure you either write it down as clearly as you remember. If it's online, take screenshots. If there are people who witnessed that, gather them, confirm with them, so you know that you have substantial evidence, then move forward with that. Then we move on to getting somebody involved that is of authority.
Okay.
Mom,
Like a mediator.
a mediator.
Yeah.
So a counselor or the principal,
HR, if it's work.
whoever it is who is in authority of doing something about that, right? And then you seek support. If you feel like, okay, this took a toll on your emotions, talk to a colleague, a friend, or even take professional help if you want to deal with that episode a little bit better and healthier.
Okay. And talking of like workplace bullying, what do you see as the most typical forms of bullying in the workplace?
Right. I'm smiling because I hear this so many times. My boss this, my colleague this, da, 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 da. And then everyone regards this as, oh, they're going through a phase.
Okay.
Or they probably got yelled at by their boss. And in my head, I'm like, you just got bullied.
Okay.
Because these are the discrete forms of bullying that exist in workplaces.
Right.
So it could start with, excluding you from certain sort of information. So withholding that important updates, or oh, I didn't know about it. I don't know, and I don't know anything about it.
Wow. Yeah.
And that affects their work and the effectiveness of their performance at their workplace. Passive aggressive behavior. We've got the silent treatment, sarcastic remarks and comments, or even those eye rolls or that body language that you're just there. What was that? The typical.
At it again. Yeah.
What did I do? Right? And it's unnecessary. And we've got neglecting your contributions, like not giving you enough credit, not reporting your successes or your victories or your achievements to the higher authorities because they just don't want you to
Have that credit.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are like discrete forms of bullying at a workplace. So recognize it.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say like discrete forms, because I'm sure this has happened to many people and they're not recognizing it and they're just taking it, and it's just becoming a toxic environment for people, and they just kind of are going with it. What would you say to those people? They've recognized it in
their
the workplace. And it's really hard to then say to their manager or like someone of authority, it really bothered me when you rolled your eyes at me in that meeting. Like, a lot of people wouldn't have that confidence to do that. So as a psychologist, what would your advice be to those people and how to deal with that?
Right. So what we tend to do is we tend to overwhelm ourselves. That that happened, I need to report this, I need to talk to them about it. Break it down. Break those steps down into first, absorb what has just happened. How did it make you feel? Be very clear of, okay, this happened, and that was the impact that it caused on me. I'm gonna take it, step by step. Perhaps talk to a colleague that you trust. Get a perspective so that your feelings are validated. So that gives you a little bit of a boost of confidence that, okay, so what I felt was
right.
It was right.
I wasn't overreacting.
And again, it depends on the hierarchy you're in. So if you're at school, your approach will be different. If you're at your workplace, the approach will be different. And the people that you're going to go to will differ across these settings. So if it's at a workplace, then like we mentioned earlier, go to the HR, talk to them about it, go to your mentor if you have one at work, say, how do I deal with this situation? Do not mix the personal and professional approaches.
Okay.
Right? Personally, you might feel more comfortable because you know the consequences is what are they going to disown you because you're going to have a confrontational conversation with them. You don't have that fear. But in workplace, a lot is at stake. Your reputation. You don't want to be, oh, she's going to go snitch.
Yeah.
There you go. She's walking again to the HR office. So you want to be a little bit more mindful of how comfortable you are with who you are with to take those steps, right?
Yeah.
And break them down. Don't overwhelm yourself. How could she do that? How? So, you're just hyping yourself up for what?
Would you stand up to the bully? Direct, head on? So would you, instead of going to HR, for instance, would you first try consulting the actual person who's done it to you first and saying, this is how it made me feel? Essentially, I'm asking, how would you stand up to a bully?
Right. So how I would stand up to a bully. So because I work in a mental health facility, we don't have bullies.
We very do. Yeah.
Which I'm fortunate for. But if this happened to me at a workplace, if I feel the person is mindful and is receptive to taking the information that I will provide them with, so I will try to, over a cup of coffee, be like, hey, this is what happened. I don't appreciate that. Like we mentioned, the assertiveness off your tone. I wouldn't react to that. Okay. So after I see how they took that in, if they decided, oh, I'm sorry, I will be mindful from here on, or I don't see what I did wrong. So depending on that,
it's not my problem.
It's not my problem.
You took it that way.
Yeah. It's not my fault that you're hurt. It's like, but it is.
It really was you.
So I think depending on how they took that information in, how they managed to handle my feelings, then I would go on and be like, all right, this didn't work. Direct communication. I tried.
Yeah.
So I will then, of course, raise it to an authority that is more capable of doing so, which is where the role of a mediator is of value.
Yeah. No, I think that's important as well. And it shows the emotional awareness of that person. So they may have been if it was the first instance, it depends how many, obviously, occurrences this has happened over as well. If the bullier kind of responds in a way that says, I never wanted you to feel that way, and I'm so sorry, I didn't realise, this is happening, and takes on board, and then it doesn't happen again once you've raised it, then I think, obviously, that would be a case of it was a good conversation, you've kind of put your boundaries and it's not going to happen again. So thank you for that. So how can, if a parent, if you're a parent who's got a child who's being bullied, what words of advice do you offer to the parents to handle that situation?
Right. Now this is a sensitive one, right? Because we want to make it as subtle and effective at the same time. Your children
for the child,
yeah, because they're most vulnerable in front of their parents if they're at that age where they're confused, they don't know what to do. So I would say look out for warning signs, right? If they're missing school too much, if they're throwing tantrums to go to school, if they're avoiding certain people at school, a drop in academic performance. So those are warning signs that you'd want to look out for, even physically. Have they come home with torn uniform, or their bags have been damaged, or any warning signs that might point towards, oh, all right, something's not okay at school. Then we move on to creating a space where you endorse open communication. It's a safe space. So you could start with, I was hearing some news about bullying. Does that happen in your school? Or
The indirect way
yeah.
of this was on the news and the
They
research
talk so much
says.
about it. Do you think you've heard of this before? Or is there someone that you don't like at school? Or do you feel like there's someone you want to help that gets intimidated by others? So this is a way of also gathering your information.
Okay.
So once you've looked out for the warning signs, you've gathered your
It's like
information.
fact-finding
Yes.
first,
So-
yeah.
and then you move on to saying, all right, educate them. So this is what's happening. That these are the ways that you're going to tackle it. Be calm, confident, be sure that you're safe. Avoid going to places that you feel like you might be susceptible to those bullies coming up to you. Walk in groups. This is like an immediate intervention, right? Because you can't take an action at that moment,
Yeah.
right? So we're just, role playing with them. So if this happens, what do you think you're going to respond? So like a general protocol for them to follow so they feel more confident with that. So once you've created that for the child, move on to more practical steps where you need other authorities to intervene, such as look out for the school counselor, ask your child if they need help to talk to somebody about it, involve the school, request a meeting, going like this happened. Can you please, what is your
Bullying policy.
bullying policy. How do you wish to handle this? And stay involved and monitor the situation until you feel like it's completely diffused or eliminated at one point. Right? So I think as a parent, these are the practical steps that you can take. And lastly, at home, model behavior that is appropriate. So if you feel like that child who is anyway feeling very shy and timid, and because it could go both ways. You can either become shy and timid, or you could act out in front of your siblings or your
Aggression.
parents. So model good behavior, like, hey, I don't think that's the right way to do so. Dad didn't do that. Hey, how does dad treat his sister? How do I treat my brother? So that kind of a atmosphere that's more positive and respectful.
Yeah, thank you. And what about cyber bullying in children? So if you're noticing some things, as parents, kind of children try and keep things from them. So how would you, the parents aren't quite sure whether it is cyberbullying or if anything's happening. They've just maybe seen something over the shoulder. What would your advice be to parents that think their child might be a victim of cyberbullying?
Right. With that, it still classifies under bullying, right?
Yeah.
So those warning signs will be the same.
Okay.
Where they will act out, they will start becoming more insecure about their features or where they come from. Depends on what the bully has, attacked.
Yeah.
Which part of them, which insecurity they've kind of pinpointed. So it really depends on that one. So once you see, and when you actually see evidence in front of you as a parent, a casual confrontation. Confrontations doesn't need to be, hey, sit down, let's talk.
Yeah, because then I'm going to go, I don't want to talk, actually.
Actually, I'm good, mom. Everything's
Yeah,
fine.
I'm
So,
going to go and play.
so when you just watch it over, over the shoulder, like you mentioned, just be like, hey, is that normal? Is that how everybody talks to each other in the group? Is that the dynamic that's going on?
Play innocent kind of
Yeah.
role.
So check in with that. Go like, I would, if my friends did that to me,
I wouldn't want to be friends with
I'd
them.
be
and-
appalled. So
Yeah.
I think those casual check-ins here and there
Okay.
before we move on to, all right, this is getting serious. And when it gets serious, I think those warning signs you can't miss.
Okay. We're just out of time. I'm going to ask one final question, if that's okay. What are your, what's your 3 top tips for people that feel like they're being bullied and how to seek help?
So 3 top tips. So the one being bullied is there is hope always. There is a chance to report that. There is a chance to talk about that. If you want to keep it personal, private, choose your approach, what's comfortable to you.
Okay.
Okay, tailor it according to what you are most comfortable with.
Yeah.
Another tip that I would give is to the bully, actually, right? So to all the bullies and those silent bystanders, to gain that instant, temporary, momentarily gratification, you are causing lasting, permanent impact. on an individual. So please be mindful. It's never too late to reverse your behavior, modify your behavior. And fun fact, it takes 4 seconds for a human mind to make a decision. So
4
4,
seconds.
3, 2, 1, make the wise one.
Yeah. Wow. I like that fun fact. Maybe I'll change it to fun facts at the end. Amazing. Thank you. So that is all we've got time for. I think we could speak about this because there's so many variations of bullying
Absolutely.
that it's, I think it just happens throughout life, and I wish it didn't. I wish more people would stand up to bullies. But thank you for being here
Thank
with
you
us
so much
today.
for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're available on all platforms: YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Angami, and Amazon Music. Until next time, stay well and keep thriving.